I'm not going to worry about your level of concern.
Yoy and double yoy.
We talking about
Twitter.
Triple yoy.
Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
Quadruple yoy.
We love Pittsburgh, PA. We love Steeler Nation. We're not urinating on the fire, man.
We are not.
We mock ourselves.
It's always fire burning season.
There's never any urination.
No matriculation necessary. It's what Jin's talking about. The conversation about the Steelers' social media conversation, exposing all your hot and toxic takes. Even in the cold of winter, there's toxicity on the loose. I'm Kyle Kreis. Across from me is Greg Benevent.
Hello.
Coming up in the second half of today's show, we challenged the 2023 low-key hater of the year to come into the Kanga-Rooney court and defend his hot and toxic takes. He has accepted in the second half Jarrett Bailey from Behind the Steel Curtain and our reigning Yinzy hater of the year. He'll step into the Kanga-Rooney court and we'll see if he has to turn in his towel, the ultimate penalty. Okay, that's coming up in the second half. But why don't we get to these takes? Okay, can we start? I've got fingers on. There's the video. There's the tweet sound. Let's start it off. This is kind of just, let's start with the insiders, because this is, these are the experts, and let's just see, they're all on the same page, right? Let's start with at PG Sports Now, Post Gazette Sports. They've been putting a line in the sand, and they've been crossing that line as far as what their stance is going to be all season, it looks like. Paul Zeiss, the definition of insanity is what the Steelers are doing, and it just doesn't start with Arthur Smith. Okay, that's obviously their take. Let's. Is there any other insiders? Oh, give me a break. Here we go. At Mark Cabali, Steelers' hire of Arthur Smith was the perfect choice, even if it doesn't work. Was it insanity or perfection, or is there a fine line between the two?
One, there's certainly a fine line between the two, but I was very grateful to have had no more free articles left this month, so I wasn't even tempted to click on the Paul Zeiss article. And sometimes I do agree with Paul Zeiss. I don't all the time, but sometimes I do. I don't see what was so insane about this. I mean, I understand that whatever decision they made, there'd be a lot of fans that would be upset with what they didn't make. And if you can imagine a parallel dimension, there are some really unhinged takes because the Steelers signed a 32-year-old guy that has no experience as an offensive coordinator, but was around a really good quarterback.
I love how, even though we only had about a week of speculation, but on all of the lists, no one had. I didn't see any Art Smith on anyone's short list in the speculation portion of this show.
I do have to give Alan Saunders had a pretty good take on it, where when Arthur Smith was interviewed, he said this is the one guy who I could see that the Steelers could sign tomorrow, and then the next day they did sign him. So I mean that's as close as we have, but that might be a prediction versus real insider knowledge. I mean so far I like the pick because I have nothing to base it on, but also I try not to live in constant negativity.
Well, let's see. Did anyone like it? Let's see who liked it. At Alex Kazora. Arthur Smith checks a lot of the boxes the Steelers said they were looking for. Yada, yada, yada. I'd have to research, but I'd get some Mike Malarkey vibes here. Are you, is that a compliment or not?
Well, I mean, for me, Malarkey, and I think it is for a lot of folks, is so synonymous with trick plays, and I don't think this guy is. I imagine why Kazora thought of that is because Kazora understands the schematics and the strategics of football better than me, and that's why he saw the similarities between them. But I mean, for most of us, Malarkey is wide receiver passes and flea flickers and that kind of thing.
Let's stick to while we're here with Alex Kazora. Let's stick to Ian Rappaport, ESPN, says Smith had other options and was going to be an offensive coordinator somewhere. What was the big draw? Steelers culture and, oh, surprise, working with Mike Tomlin. This is going to be a reoccurring theme, right? From Kwan Alexander to maybe even Mason Rudolph. It's going to be, what's the common denominator? Oh, we all want to work with Mike Tomlin.
100%. That's such a major draw. Particularly, it used to be that it was a team that, like, hey, was close to a championship, and that we would bring them in. Well, now maybe that, it's maybe not quite as close, but by having Tomlin there, that's something that can draw the Steelers maybe more than a team that can offer you a few extra bucks. Plus, it just came out recently that this guy, Smith, did have an interview with Tampa Bay coming up, so the Steelers wanted to sign him, and here we are. Plus, like I told you off camera, I like this. He wants to see the Steelers culture, and he wants to work with Tomlin. That means A, he's excited for this job, B, he's glad to be here, and C, he plans on being a head coach again, which I think is a good thing too.
And the Steelers were, people were like, oh, they didn't do an exhaustive enough search. But it's like, no, they found their guy. They liked it. They signed him. They didn't let him go. What were they going to do? Interview 100 more candidates to say, yeah, I think it's Arthur Smith and maybe one other guy,
And also, we don't know how exhaustive their search was or was not, since some of the people that they were linked to didn't have jobs at the time, so they didn't have to make a big announcement saying we're interviewing this person too. We also don't know, and we don't think that they're done filling out this coaching staff. I mean, Arthur Smith is going to have a big say in that, but also the idea of them bringing in another guy to be like the quarterback whisperer. We make up those goofy jobs like the 49ers have, like passing game coordinator or something like that. All that kind of thing could happen too. But yeah, it's we'll never find out the specifics about this search until someone else writes their book.
Let's get to more people who liked it. How about at Trib Joe Rudder Tribune Review. Remember how the Steelers went 58 games in a row without topping 400 yards of offense? In 2019-2020, the 2 years Arthur Smith was in Tennessee, the Titans hit that number 15 in 32 games. 15. So, I mean, I guess anything would have been a step up for Matt Canada statistically.
Yes.
So.
Right. But this sounds particularly so. And also, this guy did it without Tom Brady. Without, this all-world quarterback. Tannehill was very good in the time that he played for Arthur Smith, but it wasn't like, wow, it's this freak of nature Hall of Fame guy.
Who else likes it? Big surprise. Is this a like? I don't know. At Mark
it's as
Madden.
Close as he can get and stay on brand.
At Mark Madden X. Mark Madden. I don't hate the hire, but it's definitely a safe hire. Smith reflects Tomlin's offensive preference. No conflict. A wide net was not cast.
Which we don't know.
What if Tomlin didn't want to widen it? What if he said, hey, if we can get Arthur Smith, that's my number one or something? I imagine if you're Mike Tomlin, you have a wish list. It's not just like, oh, let's see, the Career Finder got us some resumes today.
This is what came in from Indeed. But I think the Steelers were glad to talk to guys like Zach Robinson, and where they got something out of that, as we spoke about last week. They did learn something from talking to these people. But yeah, again, the other part of it too, like a lot of these guys, sure, they're interviewing them, but it's not like Tomlin's never talked to them or knows nothing about them. These people are literally peers. They're aware of each other. They have relationships. So what you said is entirely possible.
And Mike Tomlin is not he's kind of, is this true or not? He's the closest thing to a superstar in the coaching realm. It's like maybe him and Belichick.
I think Reed's got to be up there
too. Yeah.
I think that's true. But I also imagine, because Tomlin is younger than those guys, maybe also a lot easier to talk to than Belichick or Reed as well. Like.
Yeah, and wants to be out there. You don't see Belichick out there senior week.
Right, exactly. So, making these two kids run against each other and over again, or whatever happened to the Senior Bowl. Yeah, that's Tomlin stuff. That's part of what, they talk about being a football junkie. That's what that is.
But, these candidates who didn't get the job, interviewing with Tomlin might make their book. It might be like one of their career highlights. Hey, I didn't get the job in Pittsburgh, but I'm sitting down with Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin. Was this experience da-da-da-da-da?
Right, exactly. And look at, Zach Robinson, he ended up, what'd he do? He ended up being offensive coordinator because, his best friend became coach of the Falcons.
Yeah.
It's not like, these guys all kind of landed on their feet here.
speaking of best friends, it's like there's relationships at work here because Arthur Smith worked with not just Mike Vrabel, not just Ken Wisenhunt, not just Mike Munchak. You know, people who I don't know if they would have to give references, but do you think Art texted Wisenhunt and was like, hey, you know, or have had a conversation in their life at some point saying, yeah, this guy's the real deal.
Like, look at this guy. Yeah, he's really on the ball. He's got this stuff figured out. Yes, exactly. With all those people who we know do have relationships with each other. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, who hated it? Let's get to. Wait, where's the hater? There.
You are a hater.
Oh, we've got the hater takes. At Tommy Jaggy. Such a Mike Tomlin move. A running offense isn't going to be enough to compete for the Super Bowl. Shakes my head. I don't know. It seems like lack of a running game is what caused teams like the Ravens to lose this
Right, exactly. The Ravens could have run a lot better, having the best running offense in the league. I mean, which, kind of speaks to Tommy's point a bit. But also, I forget, it was Kovacevic that said, the top of the 4 teams that survived, they were each in the top 6 in rushing offense. I mean, it's maybe a just rushing offense isn't enough to get you there because this Titans team did not do great in the playoffs, but they ran into like Burrow or something. But they did end Tom Brady's career in New England, for those of you that forget. But yeah, but I think the idea is not to have just a running offense. I mean, this guy's not bringing in like, the single wing or something. Like,
Steeler fans, you are out of your freaking minds.
I'm glad you have that.
New for 2024.
I'm glad that's Happy New Year.
Let's more haters. At Mic'd Up Sports 1, Mike Nicastro. Gerard Johnson was the right guy for Kenny Pickett. For one last gasp with a new school QB whisperer, not Arthur Smith. Today's a bad day for us because it's the never-ending battle between is Kenny bad or is it the OC's fault will never end. Oh, we're going to have to do this all over again next year with a new coordinator. Like, what? I'm not sure what that means.
I think he means a bad day for all of us in the media on Twitter who are having to deal with that fight. I mean, that's what I take it to mean. 2 things. One, Gerard Johnson stayed home, right? He stayed in Houston to continue coaching C.J. Stroud and see what his options are like next year when, where hopefully that team gets better. Because, wow, if they don't, then that's not going to look like the best play. And 2, I really don't think this is the end of them hiring offensive coaches. I do think they're going to bring in some kind of QB whisperer guy. I don't think it's just going to be Arthur Smith. He's the offensive coordinator, and he's going to be in charge of the offense. But I imagine they'll bring in someone else as well.
Well, let's maybe this is the QB whisperer. Let's move on to Nope. Let's move on to at Jenna Harner 11. Jenna Harner, WPXI. In an interview at the 2023 NFL annual meeting, Arthur Smith was asked what he's looking for in a QB. This is the answer. You need to understand the person, what makes the person tick. It's not just the physical, it's the mental. You're dealing with the responsibility of being a QB day after day. You're going to be accountable. It sounds like he is the QB whisperer. He's like the Zen coach.
I mean, after reading this, I'm thinking like, yeah, I could be a QB too. I mean, it all sounds very good. This is yeah. I mean, this all sounds like a great motivational speech. I'm not sure it helps any of you to get that last yard when you're diving to get to the end zone against the Cardinals. But it sounds great here. But maybe he is the guy, and maybe Tannehill does come to Pittsburgh. But I would be surprised if this was the end of bringing in offensive coaches.
When I think about QB whisperer, I think of BA's book where the QB whisperer is basically just like always have an option to gun it to the end zone. If plan B is always gun it to the end zone.
Just throw it as far as possible, which is why they got BA out of here because Ben got sacked like league record times at that era.
Maybe I don't want a QB whisperer. Maybe I just want a
the guy that's like, hey, let's try the check down. Like I think there's a guy open in the flat.
I was like sick of Twitter. I had to go to Threads. I was like, is there anything out there? Because Twitter was just I couldn't handle it.
Good. Yeah, I'm surprised you can at this point. I always worry about you out there on Twitter.
So I headed over to Threads. There's no Thread sound. Ooh. Excellent. I thought Ted is closest to Thread.
I thought they were like jamming, like it was like the Threads. Okay, or the Threads of Time and Bill.
I like that. Let's get to the Threads of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Over on Threads, we've got At Fantasy Matters SVA, what? The Steelers hired Arthur Smith as their new OC? Come on. That's the one dude that's worse than Matt Canada. I didn't know there was anyone worse, and we found the only guy worse than Matt Canada.
And this guy knew it. He knew it all along. And he buried this insight on Threads. That's definitely something you could have taken to at least Reddit.
More threads.
Excellent.
At CD Carter 13. My take on the hiring of Arthur Smith, going from Canada to Smith, isn't a serious hire.
Oh, no.
I can't believe we didn't do a serious hire with this.
That's a shame. We had the joke hire.
What would a serious hire have been?
I see. That's what's so weird about this tweet. A serious hire, and I'm not clicking on this person's link to find out, but a serious hire, given what the other options are, a serious hire would have been a 30-year-old who hadn't actually called plays yet in the National Football League.
Or if it was Byron Leftwich, would everyone been like, "Oh, right, a serious hire,
right, a serious hire, yeah. The guy, right?" And all the other criticisms. Well, he's a guy we know and in connection. Yeah.
More. Do we have more?
Excellent.
We do. One more thread at sports_council. It's absolutely baffling that Arthur Smith, a coach who refuses to use his best players, was even considered for a coordinator role. Then again, this is the same head coach who hired Matt Canada. Oh, my goodness. But like we already said, if this guy wasn't an OC in Pittsburgh, he was already going down to Tampa.
He's going to be an OC somewhere, this guy, and he was going to be a pretty quick. I mean, he's not going to be involved in a lot of roster decisions with his team, and if there's ever a fan base that should know what it means that you can be a great coordinator and not a good head coach, it's the one that won Super Bowl rings with Dick LeBeau.
Oh, yeah, good point. Where's the boom? Okay, we enough, Arthur. We're gonna get to know Arthur at some point throughout the year, right?
Right, probably more than we want to.
But there's other drama to get to. That's right. It's the return. QB 22 plus 2. Where are you? We've got some work to do now. QB 22 plus 2. Are you? We need some help from you now. You know we got a mystery to solve. Which QB do we want gold and black? But don't get sacked. If QBs do what they will do, you can get yourself a yellow jacket. Oh, well, I guess it was a little premature to offer a yellow jacket.
Hey, you don't know. I saw Mason win a bunch of games in December. I'm not rolling anything out.
The Taylor's still open. We're not matriculating on the Taylor.
Well, we're definitely not. That's probably a crime.
But it's back. Part 2, QB 22, the sequel. Who will be our QB? Let's get to at S City Nation 412, Steel City Nation. Rooney today said improving QB play next year is a major step that must be taken. But then goes on to say he still has faith in Pickett and believes we haven't seen the ceiling in Rudolph yet. If QB is the one thing keeping us out of Super Bowl contention, why not? You want to go big? You want to go for one of the free agents?
I mean, I think the way I kind of interpret the Rooney statement here is that it's sort of like a state of the Steelers all right now. I mean, you can believe in all three of these things and then, give one of the bridges to Kirk Cousins if you so choose. Like, all three of these things can be true. You can hold all three beliefs in your head. I do believe they're going to go into the season with Pickett and with at least two other guys to compete with them, whether it's Rudolph, whether it's Ryan Tannehill, whether it is Cousins, and it'll be some like mid-level draft pick too. I think they're going to, I think it was Depot that made the comment during the early part of the AFC Championship game. Sometimes you just want the Steelers to draft like 6 quarterbacks until this works out. And I think we might get as close as we're ever getting to that this coming offseason.
Right, just like 5 QBs at camp, and we'll see which 3 make the roster.
Right, and then that's how you find Duck Hodges and win like 3 or 4 extra games that maybe you didn't think you were going to that season, because I remember that from free agent tryouts. Yeah.
Why don't we go to at Thompson Photo 12, Ed Thompson. So Mike Tomlin is head coach and said Pickett is QB1 penciled in. Then the owner says this. This is really disconnected team and organization. I'm sorry. Head coach and owners better get things together. Is there contradiction between what Tomlin said and saying that the QB1 is on the roster and Art saying he wants to do business with Mason?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily totally mutually exclusive of each other. I think you can. I also I kind of think Tomlin's comments were, a little bit more right after the game. It's hard to be like, no, absolutely not. Our quarterback is off in some other roster. That's such a weird question anyway. The right thing is to give Pickett as many chances as possible. But I do want to say you didn't read the last part of this person's tweet, which was they better get things organized or they'll have another one and done postseason. So like already. The season has failed because, I don't know, Tomlin didn't respond to a text fast enough. Like, this is a new level of negativity.
You know who else was one and done? We said this many years. The Dallas Cowboys, the Miami Dolphins, the I don't know.
No, you can go on the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah.
All right, let's get to some con season stuff, like at NFL Dove Kleiman report, Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins is looking for $90 million guaranteed for 2 seasons to re-sign with the team. Is that a fair price for Cousins? If he's the top QB on the market, would you be, let's not say $90 million over 2, let's just say 1 year, $45 million. Would you be willing to pay that check?
I mean, I don't have everything in front of me. What that would keep me from buying? So I don't have that in front of me. I mean, I'd think about it. I mean, I'd look at the thing. I'd also take a real look at Kirk Cousins' health. Because there's a reason we were all talking about Joshua Dobbs last year, and it's because Dobbs was playing because Cousins was hurt. Now, I don't know if the price goes down a little bit or up if he's not playing with the Vikings, but I mean, there's only so many teams out there that need like a starting quarterback right now. Like, there's only so many places that Cousins can really land. And, I'm not talking myself into this, but Pittsburgh is on that list of what, 8, 10? I mean, I haven't thought about it, but it's not like 20 teams are in the running for this.
What if you had to cut Cam Hayward to sign Kirk Cousins?
I mean, I'm trading one injured player for another. I don't know if I make that deal because I'm not a big Cousins guy. I can see it the best of an option, but I mean, I'm never going more than 2 years on this. I'd have to be talked into Cousins to start making those kind of decisions.
Well, you might not have to worry about Cousins because where's the at Panther Rants, Walt Harris got this from a pretty reliable source. He's never wrong. Russ Wilson and Sierra was spotted in Oakland visiting the Pitt campus. There they are, coming out of Antoon's Pizza. Where is it? There they are. That's not photoshopped.
I was saying, AI is getting better at spelling Anthony's Pizza, but no, I don't actually need my glasses on to see that this is photoshopped. Now there's a question. If Russell Wilson comes to you for like very, very low, I could see that over Kirk Cousins for $45 million. If it's Russ for like whatever they're paying Mitch, I would think about that.
All right, so you're
I don't want to have to spend much for like this quarterback who's coming in. I'm totally not sold on this Kirk Cousins is the guy thing. But maybe, I don't know.
Is it going to be find out what Mace is getting first, or is that the plan A and then to the free agency market, or there's not going to be that kind of time for one of these big QBs?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if there's going to be that kind of time for Kirk Cousins. Like, there is going to be time for some of the other ones. Like, I mean, Jameis Winston is always around. Gardner
Minshew. Right. What about Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, I mean, I love how they always say a Jacoby Brissett type, and they mean Jacoby Brissett, the original and best Jacoby Brissett type. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just so hard for me to believe Cousins is this guy because, again, I believe in George and I believe in Deontay. I also believe Justin Jefferson's better than both of those guys. And there's some real weapons in Minnesota. Like,
oops, wrong button. Sorry. I didn't mean to give you the crickets.
No. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, well, to be determined in the QB thing. Let's why don't we take our break because we're coming up in the second half. The return of Kanga-Rooney Court. our low-key hater of the year, will step into our courtroom and might have to turn in his towel if I do my job right. Also, we got to talk about art, what Art said, right? A little bit of art, maybe. And maybe the Steeler artifact at the Hall of Fame that maybe doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
Oh.
Am I the hater? I'm the hater. Put me on the X. All right, we'll be back in a second.
Did you bring the peanuts, pretzels, popcorn? Did you bring the burgers?
Where's the beer?
Did you bring the ketchup, mustard, pickles? Did you bring the pumper?
Yeah, it's here.
Did you bring the icy light Iron City pumper?
Can't forget the pumper.
One of each.
Did you bring the ice to chill the pumper?
Yeah.
When you want a cold one, just reach. Have a picnic, have a party, call the people, tap the pumper, have a pumper party. Did you bring the pumper? Did you bring the pumper? Did you bring the pumper? Yeah!
All right, it's the second half of what Jin's talking about. And we promised the return of the classic. That's right. These are real Steelers fans walking into a real podcast courtroom?
A virtually real podcast.
A virtual podcast courtroom where they will have to defend their hot and toxic Steelers takes. Welcome to Kanga-Rooney Court. Today's defendant, from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, deputy editor, the 2024 low-key hater of the year, Jarrett Bailey. Welcome to Kanga-Rooney Court.
I've got the handcuffs on, the shackles around my ankles. I've got the Hannibal Lecter mask on and everything. I'm ready.
You're here to stand trial. Can I work the cameras in? You're here to. Is it a trial? I don't know. You're the judge, Greg Benevent.
It's an exposition. We're trying to find things out. We're just here. This is like a voir dire. Yeah.
Judge Greg Benevent presiding. District Attorney Kyle Kreis. Jarrett Bailey claims to be a Steelers fan. I know that he's you're a Ben guy, right? Your number one guy is Ben, right?
Yeah, big Ben guy.
Is it safe to say you are not come on, where's the, do I have the sound? Oh, safe to say you're not a Kenny guy. Let's show the tweets. New Year's Day, bright and early, first tweet of New Year's Day. I sincerely don't see Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh next season. Let's follow that up with, oh, come on, the passcode, yes. Follow that up with, what day is this?
I think it's January 4th.
January 4th. Who do you want your QB of week 1 of 2024? If your answer to this question is Kenny Pickett, you're a lost cause. Obviously not a Kenny fan. Is that safe to say?
Of Kenny Pickett, the quarterback, no.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a nice guy, but Kenny Pickett, the quarterback, he stinks.
Although if you go back in time to 2020, the Big Ben, where is? Oh, the technology's just a little further down.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's go back to 2021. Ben's final year, right? One bad year doesn't mean a bad quarterback. Big Ben had an abysmal year too. Worse than the year Wentz had. He'll be fine. Are you willing to give Kenny the same kind of leeway that you gave Ben? One bad season doesn't mean a bad quarterback.
No. I think so. This is from 2021. That tweet. Okay.
Yeah.
My guess is the year that what I'm referring to there would be 2006 when he went 18 touchdowns, 23 picks. The year after they won the Super Bowl. So a lot of context needed for that. Where Ben had a really bad year. It was after the motorcycle accident and everything, and his numbers. He threw for a career high in touchdown passes, but also led the league in picks. They went 8-8. But from a Kenny perspective, a guy who is, every stat that comes out is like, oh, let's look at this from a historical perspective and touchdown percentage. Oh, Kenny Pickett's the worst of all time when it comes to that. A little large difference in terms of the context behind that. So my guess is that's the year I'm referring to, at least from that tweet.
All right, yeah. So, Kenny had the worst statistical season for a quarterback. So that means only room for growth at this point.
I suppose to an extent. Like I said, a big difference between consecutive AFC Championship games and a Super Bowl win, and then consecutive 9-8 seasons or whatever it has been.
Speaking of going back in time here, we found the Big Ben. I just find this this was pretty funny.
This is great.
Let me find the. Oh, come on, internet. Here's the from November 15th, 2020. I think it's time Big Ben entered the MVP conversation. November 15th. Now let's spring forward to 4 weeks later. December 27th, Big Ben cannot be the starter next year. And you were a Big Ben guy. Did you get turned around on Ben at the end there, even though it wasn't he wasn't putting up Joe Montana numbers at the end, but
right.
Was it too soon to give up on Ben, do you think, or did you ride him out?
So let's see, the 2020 season, that's when they started like 11-0 and they just tremendously overachieved. And then in the final month of the year, when they lose to Washington, they lose to Cincinnati, they almost lose to Indianapolis. I think they lose to Buffalo in there too. Yeah, it was just a really, really bad stretch to end the year. And Ben looked his age, and once it started getting colder, the play started getting worse. I was surprised that he came back for 2021, especially after Marquise Pouncey retired, and I was like, that was his guy, his best friend on the team. So I think it would have been poetic for him to ride out, but regardless, came back the following year. They somehow got in the playoffs. They got destroyed, but I was surprised that he came back for 2021, especially with I think the Steelers would have been probably better off if he didn't. Like I said, I'm as big a Ben guy as there is, but you look at the options that they could have had at quarterback that year, it might have been better off if he just hadn't. But I wasn't complaining at the time, just to see one more year of my favorite player ever. So hindsight being 20.
Well, from your favorite player to my favorite coach is Mike Tomlin. Let's go back to December 7th. It's time for the Steelers and Mike Tomlin to part ways. Yeah. Obviously, he came back, but then on December 23rd, Mike Tomlin collapsed down the stretch again. Did you after the way the season ended? Did you warm again to Tomlin at all, or is he still on your hot seat?
Here's the thing: I like Mike Tomlin, and I think that when discussing Mike Tomlin, the coach, especially in seasons like this, it does get a little bit tricky because it does come off as me presenting that I don't like Mike Tomlin, like the dude. That's not the case, but I think there's something to be said for the fact that they lost to New England and Arizona in consecutive games, and then they lose to Indianapolis to go from 7-4 to 7-7. And then they win the final three, and everybody's like, oh, Mike Tomlin does it again. Well, how much credit are we going to give a guy for, how much credit do you get for saving a sinking ship when you were pouring water onto the boat? And like I said, I like Mike, but the playoff underachieving has been going on for so long. And at some point, you got to have results in the postseason for me to really be on board. And right now, going into this offseason, if they don't make a lot of moves where it shows, okay, we are in this, we are going balls to the wall to compete in a very deep AFC, very congested AFC. It's going to be hard for me to get extremely excited if they run it back with another not good quarterback and just hope to win games 20-17 all year like they have the past couple years. So I hope that they make serious changes and try to approach this offseason with a modern approach to football.
My argument as far as the playoff record is only that, it wasn't Tomlin who threw a red zone pick against the Bills. It wasn't Tomlin who snapped the ball over Ben's head against the Browns. It wasn't Tomlin who ran down the defense against Jacksonville, in 2018 or whatever.
All are very fair arguments. I hear you.
Okay. Oh, you heard that, Your Honor, conceding to the prosecution. Okay, let's look at one last tweet. Is this the hottest take of them all? Possibly, if I can only find. From October 1st, a 6-11 season is the best thing that could happen to the Steelers, to be honest. 6-11, what would that have gotten them? Maybe the 11th pick instead of the 20th pick. Is that?
I would have to look at the draft order to see like what teams finished where, but my thought process, yeah, basically that everybody could stop talking about this non-losing streak thing that is ultimately meaningless. And I think that they could realize, okay, yeah, our quarterback room is not good. Our quarterback isn't good, and we have to make a lot of changes. Now, they go to the playoffs again by way of very much overachieving, and then they lose in the playoffs. I'll say this though. It seems like, like I already said, it seems like they realize, okay, we need to do something different at quarterback, which is good. And that was my thought process with that, to be like, okay, if they go 10-7 and get to the playoffs again, this whole organization's going to pat themselves on the back and say, oh, we're close. We just need to make slight changes. We don't need to make any major changes. We'll be right back in the playoffs. That was my biggest worry. And at that point, I was like, okay, maybe if they just stink one year, then they'll make actual changes. Because there are years where, coward teams, like the year before they got Ben Roethlisberger, they went 6-10. They were in a position to take a quarterback, which ended up being Ben, and it turned the tide of the franchise. So sometimes you just need to kind of bite the bullet and accept that your team, like from a fan's perspective at least, that, hey, this might not be the year, but a bad year might be needed. And for the past couple years, I said maybe they just need a bad year. But they always are good enough to not be good enough. And that seems to be the spot that they're stuck in right now until they do make some major changes.
Although, wouldn't you say there are 31 teams that aren't good enough to be good enough? I mean, look at, Miami. Wouldn't you be in a more desolate position if you were a Miami fan after scoring 80 points every game for, the season and then couldn't put it together? Or Jacksonville, you've been sitting with this number 1 overall quarterback and just can't get to the playoffs. Or what other teams am I thinking? How about Cleveland, where you had one of the 2 best seasons of the last 30 years?
Yeah, I can hear those arguments in terms of like, I guess the point you're making is like bad teams that are finally like good again. And the thing with me is like the Steelers should be held to a higher account than that. Like for teams like you look around the league right now in terms of Kansas City, Andy Reid, he finally found a quarterback that he can win with, and he keeps winning. New England for 20 years, like that should be the bar, not just getting into the playoffs and getting to the dance, like winning games and going deep to the playoffs. Like, would I rather be the Steelers or Buffalo right now? Absolutely, I'd rather be Buffalo, who's at least consistently there, and it feels like they are just 1 or 2 pieces away. The Steelers aren't 1 or 2 pieces away, unfortunately. Now, if they get a quarterback somehow who plays to the extent of, whether it be they make a splash in free agency and it ends up being, like a Matthew Stafford to the Rams situation, that's cool. But they need to be serious about getting that type of piece, especially in an AFC who CJ Stroud looks like a stud. Trevor Lawrence is still there. Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Like, it's just stacked with dudes, and they need to get a dude. And that was basically my thought process behind everything, is they need to get another dude. Green Bay's been lucky enough to have just 3 consecutive ones. I don't know what's in the water in Wisconsin where they just keep getting guys, but hopefully it's not another lull like the Steelers had between Bradshaw and Ben Roethlisberger, where it's a lot of, okay, there's a Bubby Brister, a Mark Malone, Cordell Stewart was fun for a couple years, then he fell off a cliff. So hopefully it's not a situation like that.
Fair, although I will, we've gone to AFC Championship games with Bubby and Neil, and
different era though, man. Like, I think when you look at those types of years, like, the early 90s and whatnot, game is very different, almost 30 years later, where passing and having a great quarterback is such a vital part of getting anywhere in this league. So I don't think we're ever going to see, a Neil O'Donnell type guy, take his team on a wild ride like that. At least not consistently. There might be a year where you'll get like a Nick Foles type thing. But even then, that was such a perfectly constructed roster around him. So there's a lot of variables that come into play when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, Jarrett, you bravely walked into court. Judge Benevent, are you willing to issue a ruling? Can he keep his towel?
I would like to issue a ruling. Counselor, you made a compelling argument, but the defendant was very intelligent and well argued. Everything he said came from a place of wanting what's best for the franchise. The court finds that the defendant can keep his towel and go forward with the gratitude of the court.
I can't get a victory in here. I bring all these defendants to the judge, and
this guy again, I keep thinking you're going to bring me a raving loon, and you never do. These guys have been smart.
I would have brought my towel with me into this had I known that I was going to.
But I mean, these guys are always intelligent. I mean, usually, I think one of these days you're going to get a hater on here who's just going to scream obscenities for 10 minutes. I mean, this guy was smart. He clearly wants to see the team win. That's, that's the kind of people we need more of. We don't agree with him on everything, certainly, nor will we. But I mean, it's, again, this guy clearly roots for the team and wants to see the best for them, and that's, I think, all we can ask of anybody.
Well, Jarrett, where can we find you out on socials and the internet and beyond, and anything you want to get out there?
Yeah, on the app formerly known as Twitter, at Bailey NFL. Follow all I post everything there in terms of my work. USA Today, Behind the Steel Curtain, A to Z Sports. Steelers wise, I mean, this is the Steelers podcast, so Behind the Steel Curtain, a lot of off-season coverage coming. I'll be in Mobile, Alabama next week covering the Senior Bowl. So in terms of potential Steelers prospects to look at, I'll be doing daily reports from the Senior Bowl, which you can find on Behind the Steel Curtain. And then covering everything else around the league on USA Today and A to Z Sports. Yeah. But, if you're a Threads person, I'm on Threads at Real Jarrett Bailey. So go follow me there. YouTube at J Bailey NFL for my podcast. That is where you can find me.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you having the Quinones to step into our pod and face down your tweets. Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely, boys. Here we go.
Here we go. Na, 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 na. He kept his towel. I'm kind of sad.
I mean, someday you're going to bring in someone here who's genuinely crazy, who's going to be like a threat to themselves and to us. And at that point, we're going to have to take this person's towel and perhaps physically not be able to.
If you're willing to step into the Kanga-Rooney court, hit me up somehow.
I feel like we're incentivizing toxic takes at that point. But hey, if that's where it is, that's where it is. I mean, please, that means that's fewer toxic takes Kyle has to read, which I always worry about a bit.
Do you need to get it? Okay, all right. Yeah,
no, you're good.
Let's get to some odds and ends.
Okay.
Starting with at Trib Joe Rudder. We're back to Trib's Joe Rudder. This is some Art Rooney comments. Art Rooney II agrees with Mike Tomlin that the Steelers are closer at this stage of the game than last year.
True.
He cites the rookie class and the work by Omar Khan. I mean, compared to 2022, we didn't make the playoffs, but is it a tangible step?
I think so. I mean, the offensive line is genuinely better. That's taken a step forward. The secondary is infinitely better for having Joey Porter Jr. in it. The running game, it was getting stronger down the stretch when Kenny was leading them to wins, but it was a real weapon down the stretch with Najee and Jalen. So I do agree with Art on that.
All right. How about at Bob Labriola? Bob Labriola. Art Rooney II on the hiring of the new offensive coordinator. Number one, to be clear, it's Mike's hire. Head coaches hire their coordinators. It would be a mistake for me to screw up the lines of authority in terms of how things are supposed to work. I guess there was no beating on the tables for this one. Should this really put all this to rest? Anytime there's Art probably wanted this and Mike wanted this, and it seems like Art only wants what Mike wants.
Yes, and they both want the exact same thing, which is to win. And also, I think this means that they're both kind of on the same page. So them being disconnected should not lead to a playoff loss in and of itself in 2025.
I don't understand this, Art. Tell me. At A Saunders _PGH, Alan Saunders. Rooney on the team's current playoff win drought. We've had enough of this. It's time to get some wins and take these next steps. There's some urgency here for sure. How exactly is there urgency? We all want to win a playoff game, but we're not going to be in that situation for 12 months from now. It's not like in August you're going to be like, the goal is to win a playoff game. It's not going to change. It's still going to be week one opponent, Cincinnati Bengals. We're singularly focused. And it's so how can there be urgency? Is that tangible?
Well, I've heard some people have tried to interpret the signing of Arthur Smith through the prism of the use of the word urgency here, as in the idea that's why we're signing a guy that's done this before versus, again, a 29-year-old that coordinated the passing game for a successful team. I think there's some urgency here in that maybe that's also been interpreted to kind of what you were talking about. Maybe that is the reach out to Cousins. Maybe that is throw the money at Mason. And also, I think one way you can see the urgency is that I think, and I'll put it out here, I mean, I've certainly been wrong a million times. That might be, we're going to be less patient with Pickett. You know, like it's not going to be like, because I mean, what other way is there to interpret urgency broadly other than a lack of patience, a lack of saying, okay, well, we're just trying to get better? I think that's a way to look at it organizationally.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
And it's certainly not going to tell in February.
Yeah, we're not going to know until September, really.
Right. And even then, yeah.
Or, maybe free agency if they, if they're shoppers.
If they sign Cousins as fast as they signed Mitch back when they got him, yes.
All right. Let's do one last thing here.
Okay.
At Joe Starkey1, Joe Starkey. Look at this item from the Steelers exhibit at the Hall of Fame. It's amazing. They've got the elevator buttons from Three Rivers Stadium when Art missed the Immaculate Reception.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they put in the Hall of the elevator buttons? Is that even, I mean, that's a small part of the Immaculate Reception story, but it's like, that's the, it seems like someone just found a junk closet and they said, oh, yeah, put that in the hall.
There was a piece of Steelers history that we didn't already have in the or a Hall of Fame, so we included this too. I mean, this is, I think because the point of this story, the reason he was in the elevator was he was going down to congratulate the players on having played a great game and how he was proud of them and all that. And he stepped off of it to see that they'd won. So I think that's part. I mean, I know that from having heard The Chief by Rob Zellers and Gene Collier many times, but I think that's part of it. But yeah, it's they included all of it too. Like, it's not just the buttons. It's that's pretty sizable in terms of
why not just
exhibits.
the whole elevator?
Yeah, you can step in. You can recreate the experience of not seeing the Immaculate Reception. They could have included that. Wow.
Well, I guess that's what
we've been talking about.
Yeah, I suppose so. All right. Well, big thanks. Thank you, Jarrett Bailey, for stepping on into the show. You can keep the conversation going on social media. I am at Kyle Kreis. I'm mostly on TikTok. How about yourself, Greg?
Greg Benevent, B as in boy, E-N-E, V as in Victor, E-N-T, mostly on Instagram.
You can see us perform every Saturday at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, California.
That's right.
And you can catch me on February 22nd on the Game Show Network's Blank Slate. Please, I need need some ratings for that episode. I need people to be like, "Wow, Kyle Kreis has some ratings pool here." I need that Game Show Network.
This is the best episode of Blank Slate I've ever seen. Yeah.
Hey, I've been watching some of them, and
okay.
They're not. I'm not saying that I got what it takes, but
I bet you do.
I'm not saying I got the
gabagool,
but you'll see for yourself. All right. Until next week, keep listening to your coach.
Be their best selves. That's going to be required.
Stay in school.